Welcome to Keep Hustling, where we are going past the why to get to the how. I'm your host, the always hustling Aaron Gordon, aka NY Risk Advisor, aka Mr. #Keep Hustling. In this podcast, we will be diving deep into the professional and personal successes of our guests to find out how they hustled through the most difficult times in their life and their development to achieve the success they've gotten to today. So buckle up for what hopes to be an amazing ride. Let's get to it. Welcome to Keep Hustling with my guest, Ciara Gravier. Thank you for being here, Ciara.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to spend some time with you. It's been a while.
It has been too long.
Too long, yes.
Great time at One City World Tour last year. Even
So much
better
fun.
time in the Uber to the airport after.
Yes.
And you know that I'm a big fan of yours. Not that you need my
Likewise.
checkbox. And the reason why I am a big fan of yours is because we can have the honest and real conversations, and we can sometimes agree, a lot of the time disagree, have fun doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And I know you have my back. So really, thank you for being here.
Thank you. I'm excited to hang out and talk shop with you and, just catch up.
That's, 100%. And I want to especially thank you today because I know that in the end of the fall, it is very cold and you're wearing a sweatshirt for those who are just...
It's freezing in South Florida.
In South Florida today, it is what, 63?
Yeah.
So we appreciate you sacrificing and coming on the air for the Keep Hustling podcast because we know what it must be for you to even function in such weather conditions.
You know how hard it was to get out of bed this morning, to get out from those sheets because it was freezing.
Totally unrelated to the podcast, but just a question that I have to ask you since we're on this topic. Do you have the thing where once every 4 years you put on your heat and therefore like you have that weird musty smell?
Okay, no. So in my house, I actually run hot. So my house is always cold.
Love that.
Even if it's air quote cold outside, we do not turn the heater on in my house. No, I'll turn it on in my car if I have to, but not.
But
house.
There's people in Florida who after 4 years they fired up and their house all of a sudden is full of smoke.
Oh yeah, my parents do that. Yeah, and it smells like smoke. Yeah.
You run it at 68. What's your temp of choice?
My AC.
Yeah.
Yep, 68 fan on high. It's at night.
68 fan on high. Okay, I love that.
Yeah.
In my house, there's a joke in my family with my wife and 5 children that I personally don't care if you have to walk around the house in a sweatshirt. I'm cool with it.
I agree.
We could be having like a family holiday meal and everyone wants to be all fancy and you can wear a zip up. You can wear a hoodie. Mm-hmm. I'm okay with that because what I'm not going to do is sweat at my table.
I 1000% agree. And I feel that way about sweating in my sleep. Like I cannot sweat in my sleep. And my husband runs cold. He radiates heat, but he does run cold. So he'll sleep in a hoodie and I'm like in nothing. We don't even share blankets because it's like, dude, I'm sweating. Like I need my space and I need the fan on high. And I just can't, if you're cold, put a hoodie on, put another blanket on. I mean, there's nothing, I can't peel my skin off.
I have literally told my wife that there's this thing that you can attach to the bottom of your bed and blows cold air.
He told me he was going to buy that for me last week.
By the way, I'm all in on that. And by the way,
agree.
I'm not ashamed of it.
Nope.
Because sleep is important. What we've learned in the last 10 years health-wise is that sleep's important.
100%.
And you know what's standing between me and good sleep? You not letting me put the AC on. So we're going to figure this out and I don't really care. And that's that.
I agree.
Because by the way, nobody ever lost sleep bundling up more, being under an extra blanket.
No.
They feel more cuddly anyway.
If anything, you sleep better.
That's what I'm saying. So, okay, now that
honestly,
we've solved...
Before we even move on to that, don't even invite me to your house if it's at 75.
Okay, to all the listeners out there, do not invite Ciara to your house.
No.
Or just,
Or just turn down the air for me, please.
Okay, now that we've solved all of the world's problems, this has been an episode of Keep Hustling. No, I'm just kidding.
So good to catch up.
It's so good to catch up with you. You enjoy yourself. All right, let's jump right in. Tell us, what do we need to know about the lady, the myth, the legend, and the upbringing? I know your story, but maybe our listeners don't. Tell us what we need to know about your upbringing that led you to be the incredible influence on the industry and leader that you are today.
Well, thank you. I would say that as far as my upbringing was pretty chill. Honestly, I was always a rule follower as a child. I still kind of am as an adult. So I think that's why I'm fit for insurance. I respect the rules and the boundaries. I've always been that way.
I am stale and I'm okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I never I've never been really a risk taker. Even as a child, I was always afraid of skipping school. I didn't want to disappoint my parents. So I'm pretty safe when it comes to that. And I was raised that way. And I think that's why I'm a natural fit, which is something that my husband tells me too. Sometimes he's just like, can you shut off your insurance brain, please? And not just expect that everything is going to go terrible. So I think that I landed in the right career because of that. I don't know. I guess I didn't think that I thought of doomsday or like everything was going to go bad, but he's the one that's just like, why do you always think that way? And I'm like, I think it's because of what I do.
Because I actually know what could go wrong.
Right. Because I always weigh out what can go wrong.
You don't know what happens if it rains for 20 more minutes than it should.
Exactly.
And your sump pump goes out. But I actually know what's going to happen.
Right. So I think I landed in the right career for that as far as that portion. But, my dad came to this country from Cuba when he was 14. My mom was born here. She's her family's Puerto Rican, but hard workers. My parents have always been hard workers, always going above and beyond, not just at work, but just for friends, family. I was raised in a way where you give more than you get. It's just, I'm sure it's a lot like yours, right? I know your parents hardworking. I'm very fortunate. I was raised by a dad that believes in me. Obviously, my mom does, right? But to be a little girl and have the backing of your father, knowing he raised me knowing anything I wanted to do, I could do. There was no difference in between my brother and I.
I think there is also what I'm learning, and one of the things I'm grateful for hosting the Keep Hustling podcast is that I am learning so much about myself from the guests and kind of really giving thought to things that I never gave thought to before. And my mother is an immigrant as well. And I think that there's something I don't think it's like an active pressure, like your father saying, I came here from Cuba to build a better life. And therefore, if you don't make it, but I think that there's something like when you reach a certain age and you realize like my life is so easy compared to
absolutely
what my parents went through. And therefore, not that if I fail, they won't be there for me, but it's like, if I fail because I don't put in enough effort and I don't hustle the way that I know I should, and I fail, I'll never be able to look them in the face.
Yeah. So I want, it's funny because when they came from Cuba, my grandfather went and got on a handshake deal alone, didn't speak the language. And he walked into a bank, got a loan of $600 to buy a towing truck with the handshake. Right. And my dad worked at a fish market, busting tables, and he would come home and give his mom his check. And that's what life was. You didn't get to choose if you wanted to do that, right? Like you had to help provide for the family. And it's funny because my dad tells the story that he regrets it now looking back, because his dad was like, get into this business with me with the towing trucks. We can run a business. You're young. And my dad kind of had this picture of what the American dream was, and it was working for corporate America, right? Like he had made it big. He got a company car. They gave him a computer. And my grandfather told him, they're buying your soul with a company car. You're making the biggest mistake of your life. And at 49, when corporate America dropped him, he realized my dad was right.
I think, and I've said this before, and I know that you've said this before. First of all, sick insured to have, by the way. Tow truck company, sick client to have. Yeah. Sick. You want to talk about good rates? You can make a bank on commission.
Down here.
That's it, especially down there. But again, our lives are just driven by insurance. But whatever, that's not for now. I think that being a master plumber is one of the greatest things that a person can do.
I think so as well now. But, even when my brother was going to college, he wanted to go. He was into cars. He was doing the race car thing, and he wanted to go be a mechanic. And my dad worked for an automotive brake company. And I think that there was a little bit of pressure from my dad for him to go and do IT, do computers, because that was something that it's like, it was the big goal of, right, having a child that you come to this country, you work hard, you have a college graduate in computers, which was the future, right? Which it was until 100%. It's not anymore, right? Until now, we can't find someone to fix our bathrooms or our leaky sink because there's no plumbers, there's no electricians, there's no air conditioning people. So now it's like 20 something years later that my brother's out of school and done with that. Being in plumbing or being, owning an electrical company, he would have been killing it.
What does he do, your brother?
He actually works for another insurance agency here locally.
Love that. Oh, I
Yeah,
love that.
yeah.
That's
They do
great.
a lot of condominium associations, which I don't have the markets to do. So he's crushing it over there.
But he got into the business after you?
After we sold, actually, we
Interesting.
sold the agency that we had built in 2018. And he ended up, kind of realizing maybe I should give this insurance thing a shot. And so he did, and he loves it.
It's like, I, I think it was our mutual friend Bradley Flowers who said this, but I could be wrong. But I've quoted him before on this podcast. I think it was him who said it, that when he was trying to choose a career, he loved golf. And he was like, when I look in the neighborhood, who's playing the
Uh-huh.
most golf? The
Yep.
insurance guy. Great. I'll be an insurance guy.
Yep.
There's more to the story, but I think that I think
Yeah,
it's
I
just
remember
interesting
that.
how
Yeah, he
some people
said
come
that.
back to insurance. So I want to jump into that story a little bit. You mentioned that both of your parents were in the business. You guys were all together.
Yeah, so yep, because my mom had a job with Equifax for 30 something years and they let her go. So that they were done. They took money out of their 401k and started an Allstate.
So I just want to paint the picture here. So now you're trying to figure out a career. You're
Mhm.
at that stage,
Mhm.
and your parents not only made the first leap, but
Yep.
now they're making another leap because corporate America has done them wrong.
Mhm.
That's a story I totally get. But now you're in and you come into the business, and it's like, how do you handle that?
It was awful.
Knowing that like their 401k is online, not like, oh, it's cute. This is real.
I'm going to be honest with you. I didn't even, to me, I was so angry that they pulled me out of school. I was going to the Art Institute of Fort Lauderdale for interior design. And I was so mad that I got pulled out of school to do this thing that I didn't want to do, it didn't even really register the sacrifices that they were making for us to take a shot at this at the time. It really didn't.
So take us there. So you were in school,
Mhm. I
and then
didn't
what
get a
happened?
scholarship, so that's my fault.
Right.
Yeah.
And so then they were like, listen, no more school for you, and we're starting this insurance thing. So you're coming with us.
Yeah, he was like, my dad said, listen, once we make it, once we get off the ground, we'll send you back. That never happened.
Well, by the way, doing pretty okay. You're doing pretty
Yeah, yeah. Well, but I think it's one of the biggest gifts that I also got from my dad is that we're kind of realist. And he's like, listen, it's not that you can't be a good interior designer. I know you can, but why? That's such a hard career. You have to run in those social circles. You weren't raised in that. Like, you could do this and it's bulletproof. Just be realistic and use your talents here.
I'm going to make a comment, and then I'm going to ask you a question. My comment is, I take back all the bad things I said about your husband and his inability and his sleeping
Okay.
preferences. I think that the most challenging spouse is a side hustle / semi-professional / whatever interior designer. Gosh, being married to you, gosh, you know what I'm
Listen,
saying?
my house is beautiful. Okay.
Like my house is beautiful because like even though I didn't finish interior design school, like
Yeah.
I know interior design, and
Yeah.
like I know that this window would look
Yeah.
great with a plant.
Yes.
So I take back. I apologize for every bad thing I said, and we thank you for the charity work that you do at home because charity starts at home. But how did your parents choose insurance? Like that's an interesting hustle for them to jump into.
Honestly, we had a friend that owned an independent at the time, and it's kind of the same thing. He was always doing very well, had a house in Marco Island. Like we knew that the family lived well. And I think my dad had gotten his license and started working for a large commercial agency down here, but it was commission only as a producer. And he had been in sales all his life. But he just couldn't commit to the a producer salary at that stage of his life. So he got a job in the meantime to kind of save some cash fast. And then he went to the Allstate training. He landed in the Allstate recruiting system, and at that time they were paying everything. They were paying paper, phones, envelopes, computers. It was great. That's kind of how he got into it. We opened a second location, because the bonus structure was huge for like 3-4 years, with every new location that you opened. And we did a great job with it until we realized, wait a minute, everybody has an independent on the side though. And then that's when it clicked.
It's super interesting you say that because I think as much as I love ripping on big corporate America because I'm a small community, family owned and operated boutique kind of guy with, less than 10 employees. I think that there's something to good corporate structure, so much training and whatever, getting your feet. I mean, I think that had they jumped to the independent right away, we would not be having this conversation.
Yep, I agree. We always say that. Yep. And especially since we didn't know anything about insurance, having Allstate watching you, having to send in the uninsured motorist form signed with every policy you wrote, like all of the, it prepared us on how to do it correctly. Because if we would have jumped into this independent world where nobody's watching over you and you just run wild, you just do whatever you want, right? You represent who you want. Nobody's asking you for application. It's very different. I mean, we would have to close out the day, show them our bank. Like, it helped. We had never owned a business. It helped us. We don't regret that time with Allstate at all. My dad always just says, I wish I would have gotten into insurance younger, but we learned a lot. We learned how to write good quality business, because with Allstate, you can't write the garbage. It doesn't fit.
And you probably learned how to convert leads.
Absolutely. We had a good experience until we just realized that the grass was actually greener on the other side. I think it's good for a period of time, and then you outgrow it.
So I want to jump back into something else you said. So now we're in the trenches here. You've resolved yourself based on what you were told, that you have to leave school, that you thought you were going to be an interior designer, and now you're just an interior designer on the side dealing with your office feng shui in your house, but like whatever. and you are now thrown into a business with your immigrant father, your mother, who have just borrowed against the safety net that is and was their retirement.
It was tough. It was long days, 9 to 7. And we started from scratch, from zero. We didn't buy a book.
Were you living at home?
Yes.
What was that like?
It was tough. I quit once. And I was like, it's either I move out or I find another job. I can't do it. I can't do it. And my dad was devastated, obviously. The thing is that my parents always worked together, even though they worked for separate companies. They always had a home office. So their desks were, right by each other. So they were used to kind of just being together all the time, even though they weren't working for each other. But it was tough because it was just like the family dynamic changed. And my brother wasn't working with us. It was just me. I didn't like it. We didn't know what we were doing. It was tough. It was very tough. And then it was either I quit or I moved out. And I was actually going to move in with my brother. And it was crushing to my dad. And I couldn't do it. I couldn't leave. And then I said, well, I just want my dad back. I want, like, when we leave the office, we need to leave the office. And I had to have it. I had to have that one conversation one time, and it fixed itself.
I think that the thing about family businesses is, if everybody's committed, the first years have to be difficult. It's impossible. Yep. It's like it is. But then once you get past that, everyone realizes that no one here has ulterior motives. And I'm not saying that employees or partners, things like that, outside the family are not good or can't be as good. You are not 100% convinced from day one, right, that they want you to be as successful as them. But either a parent and their child or a child and their parent, everybody wants everybody in the conversation to be equally as successful. I say that I think that the hardest position in our family dynamic in the beginning was my wife, because when I started working, the summers that I interned here, I lived at home. But then when I got married, I was working here full time. And the interesting dynamic was whatever would happen in the office that you described. And also when you're family, you fight a little different. You know what I'm saying? Right. Like you can argue with your parents and they can yell at their children a way that we wouldn't even dream of talking to just a regular employee. You know what I mean? And I remember there was like a Friday that I was just like, it was whatever it was. We were in the trenches and it was what it was. And then on Sunday, we were all getting together as a family. And I remember I had my oldest daughter at the time. And we got in the car afterwards and my wife's like, how did you guys just act like nothing? Like, what do you mean? You just told me. And my answer to her at the time was that we committed, whether it was verbally or not, that we were going to make this work. And if you make this work, that means that when a grandparent is with their grandchild, we're not arguing about policy premiums or total cost forms or how we handle that underwriting situation. Now, we were always talking about work because that's our lives. And my brothers talk about our business, even though they're not in all that. I'm sure you know. But like, I feel like when that, and then that's when the real revenue and income comes. Because then once everybody figures out that secret sauce of how to make it work, sky is really the limit.
Yeah. And it's funny because when we sold that agency in my dad had always told me, I've always listened to everything he tells me to do because he's never steered me wrong. Like he always gives me the best advice. And so throughout the years of owning these agencies, he was like, get your CIC, get your designations, have a plan B. You never know. You always need a plan B. What if we sell? What if we die? What if you want to leave? What if you want another? What if you don't want to be an owner in the agency side anymore? Just have it. It shows you're committed to the industry. Just do it, right? Like just further your education in the industry. And when we sold, I was like, okay, well, I guess I'm going to go get a job. Like, here we are. It's my plan B. And he was like, absolutely not. No, we could do it better, faster. You will not go work for someone. You could do this yourself with everything that we know and everything that we've done. I mean, we didn't anticipate COVID to happen. So.
One second, you're from Florida. You can't say anything about COVID.
I also started from scratch again.
100%. But I have to believe that the fact that you guys did it, albeit with the backing of Allstate, I have to believe that the fact that you did it successfully once, even when COVID hit, and even when you guys, we could do this. We got this.
Absolutely.
And like you had already gotten through the difficult dynamic things.
Oh yeah, for sure. And so like now he works with me. And now I tell him, now you got to give me your time off and I have to approve it, dude. Do you remember those days?
No.
I always joke with him and tell him that.
I still turn into my mother. So
that's funny. Yeah, what I was going to say when you said that thing about like corporate America, sometimes I wish I would have worked in corporate America just to see, because like right now I'm trying to build my process and document. I never worked in a place where it was that formalized. We grew.
I would love to see like a huge company. Like seriously, and I knock on the big brokers all the time. I would love to see one of their training manuals.
Right.
Or like the webinar module. Like that's got to be.
Yep.
But you have the billions. You got to be doing something right to get those kind of sales.
Right.
So I want to ask. So you had this dream of interior design, first Allstate agency, independent agency. You're crushing it. You're killing it now. Everybody knows who you are. 23, 24. 24 is a huge year for the bunker community. If I pressed you to the most pivotal moment in your career, what would you say that has been so far?
I think it has to have been last year at the Better Agency Conference, my first time public speaking.
Take us there.
It's something that I never, ever, I cannot stress how much I never would have done that for myself. Ever. I would have never volunteered myself had David Carruthers not pushed me.
Shout out David Carruthers.
Had he not pushed me, and well, he didn't even give me an option. Like Nick reached out to me, was like, "You've been volunteered."
David Carruthers doesn't give anyone any options ever. We love you, David, and we hope you're listening to this episode.
Yeah. I promise you that. I mean, him being my mentor has changed my life overall. But that was a moment where I knew I would never say no, because if he's volunteering me or he thinks I'm qualified to do it, I'm not going to make him look bad. I'm not going to make myself look bad. And then I feel an immense amount of pressure to crush it because of the women that are following me.
What makes you say that was so pivotal in your career? What did that do for you?
Because I feel like it's the first time in my career that I've actually been so uncomfortable that I felt like I was outside of myself.
And therefore getting through it and pushing and hustling through that, you're like, I thought I could do anything before. Now I know I can do anything now.
I mean, a person that has no public speaking experience ever, like the least public or the most public speaking I would do is like in front of my B&I group. I would stand up in front of 30 people and I was mortified to give a commercial.
Can we have secret time here for a minute with all of our listeners?
Yeah.
So those who are listening who don't know, I met Ciara at a industry conference called the One City World Tour, which was after the Better Agency Conference. Mm-hmm. And we were both speakers. And I remember being in the green room with you. And I remember thinking, and this is what this podcast is about, open and honest conversation.
Yeah.
You were telling me how nervous you were. Do you remember? And I was like, I remember thinking in my head, like, I should say a little prayer for her because I don't know what's going to happen here. But like, she's like, and then I come outside. You're up there presenting. I'm like, gosh, she is so good. This is so frustrating. It's so annoying. And like everyone's engaged and like everyone's listening, and her message is powerful. And I don't remember who I was standing next to, but I remember looking at them like, gosh, I was thinking like, I hate everything about this, but I love everything about this at the same time. Like, I was thinking like, are the nerves fake? And I know what you're saying, because I also, even though people think that I love public speaking, I literally, before I get on, like, I feel like I want to vomit every single time. Michelle thinks it's funny because she's like, I'm a natural. Like, I love talking to people. She's like, I just want to vomit every single time. But you are so good at it, and
Thank you.
I think it's amazing. You're welcome. I think that it's amazing that you think that that was a pivotal moment in your career, because anyone who's heard you speak since then, they're like, what was the big deal? She like
Yeah.
crushes it.
Well, I mean, imagine your first time presenting, it being an hour. An
Well,
hour
so
is
an
a
hour is too
long
long. An
time.
hour is a long time, and there were a lot of people there. It wasn't like it wasn't a 6-person breakout.
No, the better last year,
Yeah.
there was like 300 people there, and it was an hour for my first time ever. That's a long time to speak by yourself.
By the way, one of the hardest things about public speaking is time management. I don't know the people who are masters at it. Like, I don't know how they do it. I usually speak a little too long, but that's just part of being from New York. So like, whatever. So how have things changed since that moment?
So I think that I actually, it's funny because I spoke at One City, and I spoke at BrainShare this year, and I spoke again at Better Agency, and it was a shorter presentation. I think that might have been it. And I know what I have to work on personally when it comes to the public speaking, but I feel like this year, like, I got off stage and it felt like I crushed it. Like, I've done 4 presentations, and that was the first time that I felt like, okay, you left it on the stage. Like, you gave it your all. And I think the crowd is always so good. It's the most supportive crowd, first of all. And I think the material was easy to connect with. It was more emotional. And I think that obviously I had some practice. I had taken some of the things I had learned already. Even after One City, the boss was like, Ciara, you do so good. Just be yourself. Like, I think I'm almost a little too stiff. Like, I get so nervous on stage. And for me, the hardest part is ending. I get more nervous as I'm ending than when I
Really?
start. Yeah. And I kind of black out.
I'm telling you right now, I thought you were going to vomit getting up on that stage. God, I
Well,
thought
you
you were
should
not
have
going
seen
to
what
make
I
it.
felt like at the end. No.
Do you remember being in that green room?
Yeah, I do.
And I literally
do.
remember thinking, I don't know what's going to happen. We may have to sub her out. She's going to pass out. And then I was like, this is so annoying, because like she gets up there and it's like, so, I was with you 2 minutes ago. This should not be happening the way it's happening.
Yeah.
You should be bombing right now. Why is this happening? But
I
do you find that you're more confident in the other parts of your business that are not public speaking? Like meetings, when you go to meetings now, when you've worked on that, when you're now, I guess when you speak to 300 people, speaking to 5 people is easy, right? I assume.
Right. Yeah, it is. But, your mind just plays tricks on you, right? Like, that's what being psyched out does. It's all you in your head, right? It's the things that I'm thinking of, like, I'm going to bomb, I'm going to trip, I'm going to, like, the PowerPoint isn't going to work, or what if I forget my words? Like, even at Better this year, like, I started and I said like three things like backwards, but I remember thinking to myself, oh, while I was saying it, I was like, that's not where this goes. And then I said to myself, nobody knows that. The audience doesn't know that. Like, calm down, right? Like, I think I also care, right? So I feel like that's why there's so much pressure as well. It's pressure that I put on myself to do such a great job, because I care. And one of the best compliments that I've gotten, and which is really why I would continue to do this given the opportunity, is people tell me that it's nice to hear from someone that is building, right? Like, I'm a very small agency. I'm not at the top by in any stretch. I am
Oh no, you're at
building.
the top. You're at the top. You're at the top.
But you know what I mean, right? Like, there's a
No,
difference
100%. And I
of
think
being
that
told from the top,
100%.
like,
But I also think that like that is what this podcast is about.
mhm,
That you told yourself you could do it. You told,
mhm.
I take it back. You told yourself you had no choice.
Right. And I still feel that way.
Right. I'm saying you had no choice. You did it. But now you kept hustling through that. And
Mhm.
now when you tell yourself you can and will do something, you can do it much easier, because
Right.
you know that you can hustle through it. No speaking gig will ever be as hard as the first one. It's impossible.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Even though now you worked on it and you know that this goes down, this goes there, you probably can't even recreate the feeling. Even if you try, you get close, but you can't recreate that feeling of the 2 seconds before you go on stage. So I love that. And I love the fact that something that was outside of your day-to-day business ops process impacted you so greatly.
I think it honestly, it has forced me to just try to push myself in all aspects of my life to be different. This might be the year that I have been the most uncomfortable, probably even more than last year, even though last year was the first presentation. I think it took me a year to like maybe let that one marinate, but this year I have forced myself to try to just do things I would never do for myself. And I think that that's part of growing, and it's worked, right? Like it's painful. This growth is painful, right? It's new, it's uncomfortable, trying to do different things, trying to achieve different levels of even just personal growth for yourself. It's painful.
It's painful, but that's where the muscles come from.
Yep.
And I just think that that is what Keep Hustling is all about, because
Yep.
I firmly believe it may not be the way we think it's going to lay out, but if a person really puts their best foot forward
Mm-hmm.
in an honest, ethical, and moral way,
Mm-hmm.
you can't not be successful.
Right. I agree.
None of us, the likelihood, I don't want to say none of us, you might be, but the likelihood of either one of us being Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk is very slim.
Mm-hmm.
But we could be very successful.
And that's fine. Yeah, I
And
need to be.
and I'm saying, and
Yeah.
we will, and it is possible that we may fail every once in a while.
Sure. Well, they have.
But but I'm saying, but if you keep hustling through
Mm-hmm.
that, you will realize that you could be a public speaker. When I can almost guarantee when you started the agency, the last thing on your mind was that you would ever speak at an insurance industry conference for independent agents when you were just coming from Austin.
I cannot tell you how far that if somebody would have if somebody would not have volunteered me for it, I would have never signed up for it. Even now, like I had spoken to Brandon Smith, and he goes, "Now that you have a couple of presentations done, like reach out to organizations." And like I haven't done that still because I feel like it's still so uncomfortable.
So awkward. That's so awkward.
It is, right? But I mean, I also feel like it is a muscle, but I need to keep doing it so I don't lose the practice.
100%. 100%.
So,
your story is so great. I love the fact you followed your family's dream and it became yours.
mm-hmm.
And I think
that's exactly what's happened. Yep.
Incredible. Like that's absolutely incredible. And I'm sure your parents are super proud.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And wow, that's awesome. That is awesome. And I can't wait to see you soon. I hope at some event. We gotta hang out. Maybe I should come to Florida because I know you're not coming here for the next 4 months while it's the winter.
Oh yeah, no, definitely not.
Definitely not.
My husband's actually going in like 2 weeks for some concert, but I'm not going with him.
You're like, no. You're like,
it's too cold.
The hoodie's the most I'm willing to.
Exactly.
That's where I'm going here. I could talk to you for hours. You're awesome.
Same. Thank you.
We close the podcast by asking our guests to share their favorite timely or all-time motivational, inspirational quote and what it means to them. So I'm going to turn the floor over to you to give your presentation.
Oh, it's a hard question. I feel like that changes with seasons.
Give us the seasons.
Right now, I guess it's a saying. It's a clip on Instagram that I've seen. I believe it's Denzel Washington that says it, where there's people that are less qualified than you doing more than you because they believe in themselves. And that helps me with the public speaking. That helps me force myself to do, like, I have put my time, I've been in this industry for 20 years. Like I know what I'm doing. I just have to believe in myself.
I love that quote because many people see the less qualified people doing better than them. And they're like, well, that's a scam. And I always say, forgetting that luck, obviously luck and, there's plans out there, but if they could do it, like every once in a while I look at him like, this guy has no idea what he's talking about. Or this lady, like literally, like they're terrible insurance agents. Horrible. They don't even answer the phone. These people are horrible. And that's what they're doing. That means that I can be successful if I put in the work. So,
and that's, I just finished reading the 10X book. 10X is easier than 2X. And the book has literally changed my life. Like it is, the concept of just leaning into your unique ability of what your 20% is. I'm actually going to make a presentation about it because I was speaking to someone, Joan Curtis, she's in Oklahoma. And she was like, even in this circuit of speakers and conventions in our industry, there's never any women doing business presentations. And I said, you're right. It's the community service. It's what's the process. And I said, I'm going to be the one to do it.
Yes.
And I'm going to be the one to do it based off of that book and how I applied it in my agency and this concept of getting rid of the 80% that has me on 2X, right? And it kind of ties back to that, finding what are you good at, what's your gift, and just leaning into it and doing that every single day.
and hustling right through. And
Right,
there will be
right,
times when you'll question it. You'll say, oh, if I would have kept doing this, then maybe I would have
right.
seen an extra $1 today. But if you keep hustling through that to get to your goals with your goals in mind, then you'll see the ultimate success.
Yep. Yep. That's kind of like where I'm at with that mindset. And especially for this year, I think that's kind of been where I've been, even with the public speaking. Like, I mean, if I'm given the opportunity, it's obviously because people believe I am capable of it. So show up, do your best, and do it again, and do it again, and do it again.
And keep hustling.
Keep hustling. That's your. I mean, I might just steal yours, honestly.
You know what? You can steal it, but I got the trademark.
Yeah.
Ciara, thank you.
Thank you. This went by
Thank
so
you for-
fast. Like,
Thank you for being
I
here.
can talk to you for
Have
hours.
fun. Yeah, we'll have to do another one. Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you for being here. Thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you.
This has been another episode of Keep Hustling with Ciara Gravier. Thank you again for being here.
Thank you. Can't wait to do it again.
Yep. Remember, do well by doing good and always keep hustling. All right, hustlers, that brings us to the end of another fantastic episode. Thank you for listening. The listeners are the most important part of this show. If you like what you heard, please leave us a review wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Your feedback means the world to us and helps us reach more listeners. Plus, be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you never miss an episode. We have some amazing guests and topics lined up for you, and we don't want you to miss out. And finally, if you have any suggestions, comments, or even just want to say hello, please feel free to reach out to us on all social media platforms. We are Keep Hustling Pod on Instagram, X, Facebook, and LinkedIn. We would love to hear from you to continue the conversation. Thanks again for tuning in and supporting our podcast. We truly appreciate each and every one of you. Until next time, stay curious, stay hungry, and keep hustling.